G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Alessandra Pollina from Quotable Media, based in Boston, United States. Thanks for your time today, Alessandra.
Thanks so much for having me.
Let's start with how we know each other. Peter, our podcast editor, reached out as part of a campaign to balance up the guests on the cast, 50-50 male-female. So thank you very much for replying.
Absolutely.
So tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
So my business is a PR agency. So we work with small to mid-sized businesses, promoting them. So we work with retainer clients. We work with people long-term, 6, 12-month contracts. And that is the huge bulk of how we make money. That's really the bulk of the business. As I kind of mentioned to you before we started recording, we have some online courses and some online materials, downloadable materials that people can buy to, if they want to do their own PR, or look into other resources for promoting their business themselves, which is kind of for people who aren't yet to the stage where they need an actual agency to do their PR, or for whatever reason they want to do some themselves, or just learn some of the skills and techniques that we use. So that's a tiny little portion of it as well.
Yep. And PR for the audience is public relations. So a
Right.
core of the work that you do is writing copy and then getting that copy published in, online.
We specialize in media relations. Yeah. So we kind of help a company figure out their messaging and what they want to get out there. And we'll pitch it to media outlets to get them to write a story, do a, TV segment, whatever that is. We help get that covered on that media outlet. So we also, I always say we specialize in media relations, that, that back and forth of actually placing an article through the media. We also do integrated marketing strategies. So we'll, any other piece of the marketing puzzle that somebody doesn't have or needs, especially if it has to do with making sure their public relations is going to be successful.
Yes.
We'll kind of come in and do any piece of that as well, or work with their internal team if they do have somebody else who does marketing, or they work with another team that does marketing. We just make sure that everything's really consistent, because PR is really one little piece of your overall marketing strategy, and it all works together so well. So I say, we are a PR firm and we specialize in media relations. We do really all aspects of digital marketing. Yeah.
And copy or words are so powerful, and PR, is bigger than that. But in the last 10 years or so, particularly, I've really come to understand the power of this part of marketing. I remember reading David Ogilvy's book, Confessions of an Advertising Man. He was, I think, in his 40s when he got into the ad game, and the Mad Men series, I believe, are really based on him in the 50s. And just seeing the power of the words back then, obviously print, and then soon after that, TV was really, really central to marketing. So the words that companies use to market and advertise their products and services, hugely powerful.
Yeah, it really is. Anything that you put out there on behalf of your brand, that really it falls under PR and or works very closely with what we're doing. And yeah, the words you use and anything that the images you use, any of the way that you are projecting your brand, it's, it has such a direct effect on how people are going to perceive your company and your product, yourself, any of that. People make a decision or make a judgment based on the first thing they see about your brand. So it's very important.
And I think a lot of small business owners make the mistake of thinking it's just words, I can do it myself, or it's just brand and images. But it is definitely a skill, and something that I think small business owners should be seriously looking at investing in, using an expert.
I totally agree. I think there is, there's a certain amount you can do by yourself, if you have, that certain foundational skill set. But yeah, I mean, it's people, I think, and the funny thing is people sometimes, I think, set aside a marketing budget when they get started, but they don't see necessarily PR as part of that. And so then they'll realize, oh, I need PR. And they'll reach out to, an agency like mine, and they're like, oh, we don't have any budget set aside for PR. And it's just like shocking that people don't realize that sometimes that is a major investment that you really should have kind of sorted out before you're starting your business, or, at least have a marketing budget. Because otherwise, what do you have? I don't know. You really need to market your business from the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite Peter Drucker quotes, when he said that there are two things that add value to a business: marketing and innovation. Everything else is a cost. And I think that's so true.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Well, tell our audience how you started out.
Well, I started, I studied PR in college. I went into university, not knowing what I wanted to do. I applied to the School of Communications, knowing that I liked that general, I wanted to do something related. But I didn't really know what PR was that much. But in my studies, I took classes and decided, this is what I want to do. I really liked that, you really got to use a lot of creativity. I liked writing, but, when I was in college, everyone was obsessed with the idea that like print was dead, and, being a journalist was just the most terrible business idea you could think of, or career idea. And, I kind of liked the idea of advertising, but I also didn't want to feel like I'm selling random things to people all the time. So it kind of like PR was that thing that brought it all together. And I felt like, I can actually really help promote businesses in a way that's really, or promote brands in a way that can be really powerful. I can be promoting only things that I really truly feel good about and support and want to, feel that will actually help people to get out there. So that's kind of where that came from for me. And I just started applying for everything I could, taking as many internships as I could during school, so that I got a really strong foundation and got that basis in all different types of, in-house and agencies, in-house for smaller organizations, big places, small places, like as much, experience as I could to get the different senses of what different workplaces are like, what different experiences would be like. So when I graduated, well, basically, long story short, I ended up starting my business within like a year of graduating college, because I had all those experiences basically.
Yep.
And I started out working basically in a very small agency. It was mostly me and the guy who owned it. So I got a lot more experience really quickly. And it just started happening that my friends then started, or people that I knew, or, people who knew people I knew, started opening their own businesses like right at that time, and would just connect me and be like, oh, she does PR. You should talk to her for the opening of your thing. Yep. So I started taking on, little clients here and there that way, while I was working at this other very small agency. And he was super supportive of, do what you want to do kind of on the side at the same time, because they were essentially not big enough clients that they would have taken on anyways. So I was really lucky in that way. I didn't really take the leap that a lot of people talk about when it comes to starting your own business. It just started up very slowly at first, and like almost not even that intentionally, while I was working with him. And then it just kind of got to a point where it made more sense to ramp that up. And I just really liked to work by myself. Yeah. So eventually I was like, why am I even still working technically for someone else when I'm doing it also on my own, and in charge of all my own clients and what we're doing and all of that stuff. So I started.
Yeah. What year? Sorry, what year was that, and how old were you when you?
So that was 2012, because it was. I think I have. Yeah, probably about 1 year after I graduated, which was in 2011. When I officially said like, this is a thing, like this is a business. So I think I was probably 23.
Wow.
Pretty sure I was 23.
Great. And do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth?
I mean, yeah, I think so. And it's funny because, well, I mean, maybe it's not funny, but I was never one to track because, as I said, like I started it basically because it just seemed more desirable than working for someone else. I've had so many ups and downs in the business in the first couple of years. I would say I had my son within the first, well, now I'm saying 23. I don't know. Well, yeah, within the first 3 years. I'm trying to make sure my numbers are making sense. So I had my son and I tried to really scale back as much as I could. But as you know, as a business owner, that's so hard. So I really worked straight through. I didn't actually technically take any time off. I was emailing from the hospital and, and I was still dealing with everything, which I don't recommend. And it wasn't great, but you know, everything still felt so new and I was still so excited by stuff. And I was planning to be a little more organized, but he came early. So that did happen. But yeah, so I tried to really scale back and take time. And for a long time, I was like, I just want this to be a lifestyle business, as they say. I think, do they still say that? I think, which like just, I want to be able to pay my bills and fulfill myself in terms of what I want to be accomplishing and what I want to be doing, enjoying my work. But I don't want to have to have to report to someone else, you know, even if I'm in charge. I don't want to have to manage anybody else. I don't want to have to tell anybody if I'm not going to work for a day or take time off or work extra or do anything else. And I was like, I just don't want anyone else related to this business. Which I felt like that for a very long time. I would say the first maybe 4 or 5 years. And then all of a sudden something changed. And I mean, I think it had to do with as my son started getting older and I was like, actually, I don't want to have to do everything myself. That's ridiculous. Why did I ever want that? Like I would rather have other people who I can rely on. And for some reason, I just started getting really inspired, I think too, by other people I was seeing in business. I think part of it is that I started so young that I didn't know anybody else who had their own business at that time. And then by the time I was closer, like more in my later 20s, I started seeing other people doing stuff and I got really inspired by it. And all of a sudden I just felt like I wanted to grow my business and turn it into an agency and all of this. Sorry, this is a really long-winded answer to your question. But then I tried to really start to grow it. So long story short, I never had really even paid attention to numbers for a very long time. And I felt like all of a sudden, like, oh, I like made something when I basically like hit like $100,000 by the time I was 30. And I feel like in the small business world, like a 6-figure business is like the thing you're supposed to be aspiring to or whatever. So that's kind of like when I started looking at numbers, I guess. But I try not to really, you know, it's tricky. I try not to get too caught up in that. Honestly, the more you make and then the more you spend. And, you know, I feel like when you get really caught up into that, you start making money and then you feel like you have to make more. And then but then you're spending more to make more. And at the end of the day, I'm not bringing home more of a salary. I'm spending a lot of time and effort trying to build a business, which I do, you know, I do more for personal reasons and just my fulfillment, but it doesn't mean that I'm even having more profit. So I try to stay really conscious of that. And what I find more important is that I'm able to provide a great workplace for my team, able to have more people living a life that they love because they love the work that we're doing and they love the environment that we've created and they're, you know, making a salary they're happy with and living a life that they want. And we're building the clients' businesses and helping them become more successful. And all of that to me is a lot more, I guess, what I pay attention to and track. So that's a really long non-answer of what you asked.
Well, that might be a good one to talk to is the number of team members. You obviously started as yourself, one FTE. Like how many full-time equivalents would you have in the team now?
Now there's 3. I have 3 people with me now. So 4, including me.
Great.
I'm still pretty much full-time. I try not to be full-time, but yeah. So, I mean, we're still considered a small business. But the amount of clients we've been able to serve and the amount of work that we're able to do for them has grown a lot in the last, I mean, you know, it's incredible what you can do with just one added like brain power equivalent. So it's been yeah, it's been cool to see. It's kind of thrilling to, it's thrilling in a way to grow that team and build that business.
So when did you add the first team member, apart from yourself, obviously?
I added basically made my first hire in not too long ago. I mean, I think within the last 2 or 3 years.
Wow. Okay. So you've quadrupled pretty much the head count in 2 or 3 years, basically.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I started, with one person. She's not actually the same one that we have anymore. But then added, yeah. So yeah, the growth itself has been fast because, as I said, like at first it was just, I didn't actually try to start like even building the business until I would say probably 2017 or 18. I should have probably checked my date book before we came on here.
So that's something you're focusing on now. You want to keep growing it, or are you happy with around 14 members, or do you have aspirations to get much higher?
Not much higher. I don't think so. I really like because as I said, like I worked in all types of places before I started this. And so I have a fairly good sense of like what I like and what I don't like when it comes to a team and how people work together and what a company feels like. Obviously, I want to try to keep the kind of same company culture and feeling that we have now. And I think we could do that with more people, but I also really like the smaller size. I would say maybe up to like 5 people, but I've changed and pivoted so much in terms of what I wanted from even just 3 years ago to now that it's hard to say. Like I try to stay fully open to whatever a year from now is going to feel like and whatever 3 years from now is going to feel like. And the fact that who I am then is going to be totally different from who I am now.
Yeah.
And, so don't hold me to that.
So when was the moment you felt like you'd succeeded?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Have I had that moment? I think there's the problem with me that I'm sure a lot of business owners can relate to is that as soon as I start to finish something, I have 3 more ideas of other things I want to do. So
that's a curse.
You never get to a point where you feel done or complete or like I've done this or I've made it. So I don't know. What do other people say for that?
Well, about at least half the people say exactly that. I'm not there yet. I don't feel like I've succeeded yet. Yeah. That's right.
I mean, I think it's great to feel like you are, that you've built something that people recognize, that people are proud to be a part of. I think that's, when I've heard, when I hear my teammates say, like, I love working here, or and I love what we do. And this is, that's the kind of stuff that I love because that's really what I've been working towards, I guess. Lately.
Well, that's the next question. What does success look like to you?
I think it's having having control, I guess, not to sound like a control freak, but having that say over like what we do and like what kinds of projects we're going to do, what kind of work we're going to do, who we're going to work with, and, being able to help others through our work is really important to me. I think that's success. It's getting past that level of business where you're like, okay, I'll take, whatever clients or whatever business comes my way, anybody who's interested in me, I should like have that conversation with because we're working on building, right? And then I guess you get to a point where you're like, no, I'm only going to have a conversation if they actually seem like they will be a great client. And I'm only going to send them even a proposal if they actually feel like someone who will be great to work with. So just, I guess having that, maybe that's the feeling like you're in the position to say no. Yeah. Maybe that's kind of what I'm getting at.
The number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast growing business?
Number one is, for me and for everyone that I've seen, I think is that like relationships and building up this referral base. I think the best marketing, and this is coming from a PR person, but I think the best marketing.
Are you PRing us now?
No, I'm saying I think that the referrals and kind of word of mouth marketing is honestly the strongest thing for building a business. I never consciously grew my client base until very recently, where I was like, actually, let's try to like promote ourselves and get new clients. Everything when it came to the growth of this business was through referrals, pretty much from other people who worked with us or knew us or knew me in some capacity.
Yeah.
And that's definitely, I think, the number one thing that you should focus on when trying to build and market a business.
And how did you fund your business?
Well, I mean, I started just my laptop and myself, Yep. That's the thing about any kind of marketing type of business. I think I was extremely lucky that there was no overhead costs for a very long time, until I chose to get an office space, until I chose to hire people. I really had no overhead, so I didn't really fund it at all. And as I said, I didn't take that leap where I had to have a bunch of investment up front. I started doing it as I was working somewhere else. So again, very lucky in all of those senses.
Yeah, great. And if you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I think I would. I mean, again, I don't think the funding really is the deciding factor, but if I was, I mean, I guess I can't really imagine. I would still want to do it. I can't imagine not doing it. I guess if I had a lot of funding, I could probably think about something real fun to do, but yeah, I mean, there's no reason not to start a PR agency right now.
And can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
I think the most stressful part is anytime you get to kind of the cusp of each growth stage. So feeling like you need to take the leap. So for me, probably when I first hired somebody, because it's there's always that investment where it's I know I need to do this, but it feels scary. I don't know, you don't know if you can swing it, but I knew it needed to happen in order to get to that next stage. It's the point where you're kind of too busy with what you're doing, but also have, more clients coming in saying they want to work with you and you don't want to say no, but you can't do it yourself. So I feel like it's any time though that you're at that cusp of needing to make a big change or needing to take another leap. Those are always the most stressful.
There's risk there. I need to take someone else on. Do I have enough clients? What if I lose a couple of clients? There's always in that growth trajectory, those doubtful moments.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
I think for me, it's maybe everything is all related, right? But I feel like it is being able to delegate things, just kind of letting go of the small stuff. You're so used to doing everything yourself at the beginning that I think just when you do add a team and have people you can rely on, it's obviously a huge change. I feel like I'm constantly working on that, but it's definitely, you can tell so easily oh, that made a huge difference. I was able to grow. It definitely was the values there.
Yeah. And what have you enjoyed least about managing the fast growth?
I think it is the ups and downs. As you said, it's every time you kind of get to one of those precipices of, oh, this is huge. I am growing beyond what I can do right now in this current capacity. But then you're oh, but what if every client decides to drop me tomorrow? And, it's I feel there's that image that you see of entrepreneurial journey, right? And it squiggles all around. And then I feel like that's always going on in your head all the time, even if, I think nobody from the outside would see that, I think it's been a pretty straight climbing ride. And I really, especially, as far as entrepreneurial, the people that I see and that I deal with and that I work with, I've been pretty lucky, I think, in terms of I haven't had any major cliff dives or nose dives or whatever, but it's always, it just that even if it's in your head, right, it's still not enjoyable.
I've been there plenty of times. What do you love most about growing a small business?
That I think is the opportunities that I'm able to bring to other people, the fact that I'm able to help my clients grow their businesses and have that indirect hand in their businesses and all the incredible things that they're offering to people, and just seeing how that exponentially kind of ripples out into the world between all of the things that my clients are doing and affecting people, and then also my team, and being able to have that. And as I've already said, like to me, that's huge, being able to offer that to people and create that workspace, because I worked in places that were not as enjoyable. And that's just always something that's really important to me.
Yeah. What's been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
Mindset. I think that mindset is so important. And again, that's one of those things I wasn't even like aware of at the beginning, right? Because I was such an unintentional business owner at first. But I think the most important thing is just staying really positive and seeing, and not like just staying positive when things, putting on a happy face when you're not feeling it, but actually like projecting that positivity out, daily affirmations of like actually realizing that like the things that I say and do and put out there they really do affect what happens in the business and the growth. Yeah. And I think once I saw that happening, that's been the most powerful thing.
And what's the number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
I think the most important thing is quick follow through. Do what you say you're going to do. There are so many people who have great ideas and, say they are going to do these amazing things and, might be coming up with things that nobody else would think of. But the difference is people who are actually going to try to make it happen, or who are going to actually make it happen and make it easy and enjoyable to work with, work with them and be able to create something that's actually going to come of it. Because,
that reminds me of one of my favorite Thomas Edison quotes: vision without execution is hallucination.
Yes. Yes, exactly. That's good. Or if it's like you kind of drag it along, right? But don't make it easy for people to work with you, like the other pieces of what you need to fall into place. So I think that follow through, actually doing what you say you're going to do, and like implementing things, especially if it involves other people, is so important. That's going to make people want to work with you.
Absolutely. And I think in particular in professional services like your business and mine as well, that I love that saying, doing what you say you will. Is so important, because you're meant to give this professional image. And if you sit in a meeting, don't take any notes, but you said, I'm going to do these 5 things, and you leave the meeting and remember, I've got to do those things, and you remember 3 of those 5, or you don't get back to them for a week or 2, it just looks so tardy. And then they start to form that impression of you. If you can't even get those simple things right, then how are you going to be with the rest of my work?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm so conscious with that also from a PR standpoint, because that's also like huge when it comes to PR. And like, if I'm going to pitch a story to a writer, and then, you better believe I'm going to reply immediately if they reach out to me or something. So I'm always conscious of clients noticing things like that too. Cause like, if she doesn't like email me within 24 hours, like, how do I know she's being a good, helping to be a great face to my company? So
exactly. Yeah.
Jump over to growasmallbusiness.com and leave your details to get a short 2-minute email I send on Fridays to help small business owners like you become better leaders. I include some reading or professional development resources I've discovered in the last week.
Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
I think that I've been really lucky in terms of who I've found. And I think part of that's been, I feel like, especially everyone who I have right now, I think is a huge win. I think part of that is that I've hired people I like and want to actually be with, and focused kind of more. Of course, the skills have to be there. They have to know what they're doing. But a lot of things can be taught if the person is teachable and like wants to be a part of the team and wants to be learning and wants to be always getting better. And that's one thing that I think pretty conscious of, and maybe able to determine, again, just from being a business owner and being around other business owners and the entrepreneurial minded people that I like to be around. I almost, not that I want people necessarily like that for my business, but it's that personality, a certain personality of, knowing we're going to do whatever it takes to get the job done, figuring things out, and wanting that success for the business. So I feel like I've looked more for that type of person, and been really lucky in just, if we want to be doing stuff together, that makes it so much better.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I think I'm trying to think if I've made any mistakes, which I'm sure I have, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think one of the best wins is that, you know, when I recognize that something's not working, I'm pretty quick to take action. So not letting things kind of sit around and fester or seem like they're getting worse and worse before I make a decision. And I'm really honest about
Yep.
everything. So, you know,
That's
as
good.
soon as something's not great, I'm going to talk about it and
That's
figure out ways to make it better.
A lot of business owners dilly-dally, as my 7-year-old daughter says, about the hard decisions or hard conversations you've got to have with people, and that just festers and makes the whole thing a lot worse. So that's great. You know, that's innate within you. What are some things you'd recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
I think that open and constant communication is really important. Transparency whenever possible. I think, you know, of course you can't tell you know, there's some things that are not appropriate to talk about, but being as transparent as possible when it comes to what's going on in the business, I think is good, and what's going on with yourself, and just creating that honesty, which will go both ways, hopefully, I think is really good. And having that like positivity, I think, and, you know, I try to implement some kind of like goals and rewards to a certain extent. Like I try to make sure, and again, I think that comes from just that entrepreneurial mindset that I have. You know, I'm constantly thinking about goals and working towards goals and trying to implement some of that in a non-stressful way to my team. I think has been kind of good. So we all know we're working towards certain things, and you know, some of them are more personal, but they also all come together and are building towards something bigger. I think that's been really good.
Yeah, good. And tell our audience how you've handled balance.
Well, that's a constant struggle.
Yeah, tell me about
it. Because yeah, you've got a 7-year-old, I've got a 5-year-old. I think, and having had him for most of the time that I've had the business, I think it's anywhere that I can find something that can be helped by someone else and having them do it, whether that's with, you know, the family, or with the business. I feel like I've been forced into finding that balance to a certain extent, because you just can't do everything all at once.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that's the thing to keep in mind is it's not necessarily balanced day to day. It's more like thinking about what makes sense for you and the time that you're in, and where things stand with that. So like the season of life, you know, when my son started school, that's actually when I first, I think brought on help for the business, because I guess because I was ready to grow more, but also the school day is actually shorter than, you know, the babysitter that I had before that. So it's just like figuring out those things. It was like, okay, now I need to make a change, right? And figure out where I can get more help in the business because I want to be there to pick him up for school. So just determining ways to make things easier for you at that time, and not being totally stuck with that forever, not thinking like, oh, this is my schedule from now on. It's like, this is what's going to work for now to make sure that I can get everything done in the business and everything done in my life. And maybe 3 months from now, we revisit that and see what that looks like, and where else can I get more help? And is that more childcare? Is it hiring a house cleaner so you're not dealing with that on the weekends or the week, or taking a weekend away by yourself for, you know, every month or something, so you can just like focus on yourself or recharge or focus on the business by a time, like whatever that is. I think is just important to kind of figure that out for yourself, and then just do it, just make it happen again. I feel like that's kind of like my mantra, right?
That's good. And how much professional development have you invested in yourself over the years?
You know, not that much, I would say. I feel like I'm kind of I love professional development. I love all the business books. I love to go to conferences or do, you know, any like online, you know, I love classes. I love learning things. I wouldn't say I've invested a lot of money in it though.
No, more time. I mean, like how much time but you're deliberate about it. You actually invest time in learning.
Yeah, I think I do in terms of like, I'm signed up for a couple of kind of like monthly membership type of things related to business where it's like, something you can learn every month or, resources. I'm pretty much always reading some kind of book that's related to business development or professional development. I would say a couple of hours a week on average. And that's mostly just because, again, I like enjoy it. So it's like kind of fun for me. But I would say probably not so much at the beginning. Again, like things have changed for me so much over time that I think I've definitely felt the need, but also like the ability to take that time and put that effort into it. The more the business grows.
Yeah. Yeah. And have you had mentors or coaches along the way? You can talk about that experience.
I've never really had a coach. I've done a mastermind with a coach basically, but it was like a small group thing, which I did for a couple of years, pretty much until everything shut down recently. Yep. We would get together in person. It was a local group in my city, which was really great because it was all women business owners from my area, and we would get together in person. I guess it was once a month, and then and then we did calls too outside of that. Like, oh my gosh, this wasn't that long ago, but this is just where my brain is these days. But it was like weekly or biweekly, a call all together. So I've never done an individual coach, but I do love.
That's like peer mentoring though. That's good.
Yeah, I love that stuff.
And do you have a board of directors or advisors? No?
Nothing so formal as that. I do. So one thing I started several years ago was a group for other female millennial entrepreneurs in my city. So I started a group to try to get together in person. Like, as I said, when I first started my business, I didn't know anybody else who was doing anything like that. So I have kind of my unofficial, board of advisors from a smaller subsect of that as a group of a couple of us who get together on a regular basis to kind of talk through business, help each other with decisions, or, any of those kinds of just talking things through really. So that's kind of, those are my people for that kind of thing.
Great. Well, Alessandra, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
I think that loneliness and finding that support system. As I said, I kind of created this group because that was big for me. Back then, before I had that, I think it's lonely doing it by yourself.
Yeah, it is. And even if you grow 10, 20, 30 team members, it's still lonely at the top. Everything's on your shoulders.
Oh, right. Yeah. That's what I mean. Like, as the business owner, even if you're surrounded by people day to day and have those people working on, your client work or whatever it is, it's not the same.
And favorite business book, which has helped you the most?
So one, as I said, I love the business books. So it's a hard question for me. One that always sticks out to me, which is almost not even necessarily a business book, but what kind of is called Girl Code. And it was one of the books I read when I was first kind of feeling the need to grow, or like it's kind of first sparked me. And it's just it has a lot of stories from other women in business basically, and like how they've grown and what they did. I also somewhat recently read the Marketing Agency Blueprint, I think it was, which I found really interesting in terms of like actually building an agency, kind of that side of things to be really useful.
Great. Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
I love the Boss Babe podcast. I followed that ever since the very beginning of when they've launched that. And they have a monthly membership, which is one of those things that I mentioned before. Like, I sign up for things like that sometimes. And so that's like a professional development kind of every month. There's new tools and things to learn about through there, which I think is great.
And what's the title of the cast? Boss Babe, is it?
It's called the Boss Babe podcast.
Oh, yeah. Great. I haven't heard of that one. I'll chuck it on the list.
Yeah, check it out.
And one tool you'd recommend to help growing a small business?
I'm a huge fan of Trello and ClickUp. Kind of similar, just for project management. Huge.
And final, and my favorite question, what would you tell yourself on day one of starting out?
I would say go for the things that scare you first, and make sure that you're consciously thinking about what that might be and making sure you're kind of going towards it.
Great. Well, thanks for your time today, Alessandra. I think the audience will get a lot of value out of our discussion, and congratulations on your growth, especially in the last 2 or 3 years, going from yourself to now 4 team members and helping a lot of other businesses out there with their PR and their media relations as well. So it sounds like you're having a great time.
Thank you so much for having me.
And for our audience, we would greatly appreciate a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. More reviews means we bubble up higher in iTunes, etc. So more business owners looking for podcasts to help with their growth will find us.